Radio reminds you that this week is National Collection Week. Click the banner at afr.net for more information, and then get packing.
I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It was a poor choice of words. The man is a war hero, and he deserves all the respect in the world.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate you saying that.
So we good?
We're good. Apology accepted.
I think that we're taking the bait in the press, and Trump is just throwing it out on the table.
The Republicans have been unable for the last 2 years to fund the government with their own votes. They're not going to get Democratic votes if they're not going to be willing to make sure that we protect the Mueller probe.
The president is charged under federal law with steering the board. And if the executive order is in furtherance of the statute, then it's not only allowable, it's appropriate and good.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome to a brand new week of broadcasting on American Family Radio and the Focal Point. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent.
As always.
Good to have Jeff back in the saddle with us. A little bit of flu, Jeff, huh?
Yeah.
A couple of nasty flu bugs.
Yeah, I had both strains of the flu.
Okay, both strains.
Yeah.
When it rains, it pours.
Yeah, might as well get them all out of the way.
Yeah, get them all out of the way at once. So, Jeff, back with us. Rob, that dog, is on vacation this week, so Jeff and I will find a way to muddle through.
You really realize how much your coworkers do when they're gone, don't you?
Oh, man, yeah.
Makes a difference.
I know it. By the way, you heard the spot for Samaritan's Purse for the Operation Christmas Child for the shoebox, and this is collection week. So over the course of time, Operation Christmas Child has delivered gift-filled shoeboxes to 157 million children. Project began in 1993, is still going strong. So this is National Collection Week from November 12 through 19. So be sure your box is filled up. Our goal this year is to collect 11 million shoeboxes, with 9.2 million of those coming from the United States. So go ahead and fill up your shoebox. You can go online, find out where you can drop your shoebox. There are 5,000 collection points in all 50 states. And if you want to track your shoebox, you can go online. $9 donation not only covers the project costs from collection and shipping, but provides a tracking label so you can find the destination of your shoebox gift. Again, this is collection week. Fill your shoebox. Take it to the nearest collection spot between now and November 19. SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. Great project. All right, we're going to talk today about how you can get vengeance on your enemies. That is the topic. And God tells us how to get vengeance on our enemies. Vengeance is just a Bible word for justice. So when we want justice, we have been mistreated, we've been abused, we've been misused, we've been taken advantage of, we've been beaten, we've been hurt, we've been damaged, we've been destroyed, our hearts have been broken, and we feel like justice needs to be done. Now, we don't want to become people that walk around with a vengeful attitude, but all of us, I'm willing to bet, in this listening audience, have had experiences in our lives where we have been so badly treated that something in us cries out for justice. We want justice to be done. We don't want this individual to be able to get away with the kind of treatment that they have administered to us. Now, that's what Jeremiah 51 really is all about. And this is about God taking vengeance on Babylon for what they had done to Jerusalem. He says in verse 1, Jeremiah does, speaking for the Lord, I will stir up the spirit of a destroyer against Babylon. He's referring here to Cyrus, who is the king of the Medes and Persians, present-day Iran, by the way. But God says, I'm going to stir up his spirit. I'm going to agitate his spirit. I'm going to be the one that breathes into his spirit, stirs him up, puts the idea in his mind to go after Babylon. That's going to come from me. I am going to stir up his spirit to wage war against Babylon as a destroyer. And then he says in verse 2, I'm going to send winnowers to Babylon to winnow them. Now, a winnower was somebody, remember, they had these threshing floors, elevated places where the evening winds would sweep through. They put all the grain in there with all the chaff and everything in it. Then they'd have these winnowers would come. They would take pitchforks and they would throw everything up in the air. And the heavier stuff would fall back to the threshing floor. The lighter stuff carried away by the wind. And God says, that's what I'm going to do to Babylon. I'm going to bring the army of the Medes and Persians in. It's going to be fruit basket upset. Everything's going to be thrown up into the air, and the chaff is going to be carted off. And the reason he says I'm going to do this in verse 5, for Israel and Judah have not been forsaken by their God, the Lord of hosts. Israel and Judah have not been forsaken by their God, the Lord of hosts. So God says, I am coming to take vengeance on Israel and Judah. I am their God. I was their God. I still am their God. This thing is from me. This destruction at the hands of Babylon, this is from me. And by the way, let's not forget, if something terrible happens to you because of the person that you want to be the subject of justice now, that terrible thing that happened to you, that was God's doing. Do not forget that. That was God's doing. He's the one that arranged that. He's the one that allowed that to happen. He's the one that maybe even caused it to happen. So that terrible thing that happened to you, that was a part of the plan of God for your life, to mature you, to strengthen you, to build you up, to teach you resilience in the face of adversity, and all that kind of thing. So never forget. So for Israel and Judah, look, they got wiped out. And God told them, look, this is my doing in punishment for your disobedience and idolatry. So it makes it clear in verse 6, this is the time of the Lord's vengeance, the repayment he is rendering to her, that is, to Babylon. Her judgment has reached up to heaven and has been lifted up even to the skies. How'd that happen? How did her judgment reach up to heaven? And how has it been lifted up to the skies? How does that happen? It happens through intercessory prayer. So what we see is that is our part in getting justice. Our part is to pray and then get out of the way, and it's God's part to bring justice. Intercession is our part. Justice is God's part. That's why Paul says in Romans 12, leave room for the wrath of God, for vengeance is mine, I will repay. So if we not only pray for vengeance, for justice, and then we get busy about the task of trying to bring it to pass ourselves, then we're taking up the room that God needs to do his work of justice. So God says, leave room, get out of the way, just clear out of there. You've prayed, you've interceded, it's reached heaven, it's reached the skies, it's come to my attention, I've taken it under advisement, and I am going to respond to your prayer for justice. So we lift it up through intercession. He's the one that brings justice, brings about our vindication. It says the same thing in verse 11. The Lord has stirred up the spirit of the king of the Medes because his purpose concerning Babylon is to destroy it. That is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance for his temple, for what Babylon had done to the temple of the holy God. Now, the kingdom of Media was incorporated by Cyrus, the guy, the avenger here that we're talking about, into his kingdom in 550 BC, about 11 years before this. And there's a phrase called the law of the Medes and Persians. I've mentioned it before. But the law of the Medes and Persians is part of their legal tradition that if the king had made a law, he couldn't even break it. He couldn't even change it because it was the law of the Medes and Persians. Everybody was bound by it, even the king who had made it. Couldn't change it, couldn't alter it, couldn't abolish it. So, when we'd be arguing with my dad, trying to get him to take us to Dairy Queen, and he finally said, no, it is the law of the Medes and the Persians then we knew we weren't going to get the chocolate-dipped ice cream cones at Dairy Queen. So Cyrus was God's avenger to come in and punish the ones who had mistreated God's people. He even says this to them in verse 13, O you who dwell by many waters, rich in treasures, your end has come. Remember, he had rebuked them for trusting in their riches. You know, it struck me as we're reading what's happening in Southern California, all of the celebrities whose homes have been burned, celebrities who've had to abandon their homes, their trust in their riches was no protection on the day of judgment. It did them no good to trust in their treasures. So here's the bottom line here. God has plenty of power to take vengeance on our adversaries and enemies, to secure justice for us, to punish everyone who needs to be punished. Jeremiah says this in verse 15, it is he who made the earth by his power, who established the world by his wisdom, and by his understanding stretched out the heavens. He is the one who formed all things. When he utters his voice, there is a tumult of waters in the heavens. He makes lightning for the rain, and he brings forth the wind from his storehouses. So don't think that God doesn't have enough power to do exactly what you're asking him to do on your behalf and bring justice. Now, God speaks to Cyrus and says to Cyrus in verse 20, you are my hammer and my weapon of war. With you I break nations in pieces. With you I destroy kingdoms. So again, this is a reminder that God is sovereign over all of the nations of the world. When you read about wars and rumors of wars in various places, God is behind every one of those. He has a purpose for those wars. He's stirring up somebody to start those wars because in some way or another it serves his purpose. And so he says, Cyrus, I don't want you to get a big head because you're just a hammer. You're nothing more than a tool in my toolbox to punish the nations of the earth. You know what he says about Babylon down in verse 25, I will stretch out my hand against you, roll you down from the crags, and make you a burnt mountain. You shall be a perpetual waste. So Babylon's going to be a perpetual waste. Saddam apparently never spent any time in Jeremiah because he tried to rebuild Babylon. He didn't get anywhere. It's like God saying to Saddam, look, you forgot to read my words, Saddam. I said Babylon shall be a perpetual waste. All right, so our job is to lay it out before the Lord, ask him to do to our enemies exactly what they have done to us, intercede, and then get out of the way. Our role is intercession. God's role is justice. Well, let's go to prayer. Lord Almighty, the King and the God of Israel, we worship you as the God who made the earth by your power. You are the portion of Jacob and the maker of all things. You founded the world by your wisdom and stretched out the heavens by your understanding. When you thunder, the waters in the heavens roar. You make clouds rise from the ends of the earth. You send lightning with the rain and bring out the wind from your storehouses. Every man is senseless and stupid and without knowledge before you. We acknowledge today your sovereignty over all nations. When nations sin against you and harden their hearts, you can stir up the spirit of a destroyer against them. You will carry out your purpose and your decree against every nation for the wrong that they have done. The land trembles and writhes when you shatter nations and destroy kingdoms. You are a God of retribution and recompense, and you will repay in full. I plead with you, Lord God, to bring about a spiritual awakening in my city, in my nation, and in my own heart, that we may know your blessing and not your judgment. Please do not forsake us, though our land is full of guilt before you, the Holy One of Israel. I pray for myself, I pray for my family, I pray for the listening audience of Focal Point, everyone within the sound of my voice right now. I pray for every elected official in this land, including our president. I pray that you will carry out every purpose you have for us and vindicate us, that we may tell others what you have done. Defend our cause and avenge us against every enemy. May we not lose heart or be afraid. Instead, may heaven and earth and all that is in them shout for joy over what you do for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Florida law enforcement officials foiled a plot by 2 middle school girls who planned to kill over a dozen smaller children, eat their flesh, and drink their blood. The 6th and 7th grade girls, ages 11 and 12, were arrested at Bartow Middle School. The girls had several weapons, including a butcher knife, a knife sharpener, and a pizza cutter. When asked about their motivation, the girls said they were Satan worshipers, and they planned to drink their victims' blood out of a goblet they were found with. Warfare, people. This warfare is spiritual.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner. For more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Yesterday, November 11th, was Veterans Day, declared a national holiday by President Woodrow Wilson in the aftermath of World War I. Although World War I was not officially over until the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919, hostilities ended with an armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, November 11th, 1918. The U.S. Congress gave a concurrent resolution that said, quote, "Whereas the 11th of November marked the cessation of the most destructive and far-reaching war in human annals, and the resumption by the people of the United States of peaceful relations with all other nations, it is fitting that the recurring anniversary of this date should be commemorated with thanksgiving and prayer," end quote. Over the years, the holiday has been expanded to include U.S. veterans from all of America's wars. As we observe this 100th Veterans Day this year, let us keep in mind that today we celebrate the sacrifice and service of all of our U.S. military veterans from all branches of America's military services, while on Memorial Day in May, we honor and remember those who died while serving, giving that last full measure of devotion for their country. Take the opportunity today to thank all you know who served. Let them know that they have the dedicated thanks of a grateful nation. Because they served, we have the wonderful freedoms we enjoy here in America. Personally, as the great-great-grandson, the grandson, the son, and the brother of veterans, I say thank all of you for your service. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Fastest 60 minutes in American media, so let's put the pedal to the metal. Today
go
is...
Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go!
Go Speed Racer. You know, that is a cartoon that I've never ever seen. I've never seen that even one single time.
Yeah,
but I like the theme song.
It has a certain following. It's not real. It's not great.
Anyway,
they actually did a remake of that movie.
Of
some kind of 3D
Racer?
movie. It didn't do very well.
Didn't do very well.
No,
I can't imagine why. So you might, this is Veterans Day today, celebrating yesterday over the weekend the 100th anniversary of the ending of the Great War, the name for World War I. This was going to be the war to end all wars, and of course we see how that worked out. But the poppy has become a symbol for the American Legion of Remembrance, the little poppy. And you wonder the backstory of that. What happened is after World War I, what scientists began to notice is that poppies were growing around the edges of the graves of those who were buried in the battlegrounds of France and Belgium. They finally concluded that the cemetery grounds had been enriched by the crushed lime-rich rubble that had been plowed into the soil as the battlefields were prepared for mass burials. And so the poppy then became a symbol of remembering those who had offered their lives for liberty and freedom. And so we honor our veterans today. We appreciate your time and service. Those of you that have been in battle, we appreciate, commend you, are proud of you for the courage you've shown, the bravery that you have shown to risk your life for our liberty. And we also honor those who stand and wait, those who were prepared to serve, ready to lay down their lives and prepared, if necessary, to pay the ultimate sacrifice so we can sleep peacefully in our own beds. We thank you and we honor you before the God of heaven.
Amen.
And one quick item before we move on. Do you know that, Pinocchio, what would happen when he would lie is his nose would grow, right?
Yeah.
Scientists have actually discovered that when you lie, your nose actually shrinks.
What?
Yeah, the temperature of people's noses drop, and it causes your nose to shrink. It's the most reliable lie detector in the world. It is 10% more accurate even than the polygraph test. When we lie, the temperature of the tip of your nose drops up to 2.16 degrees Fahrenheit, while your forehead, because your brain is churning as fast as it can to try to invent the lie and to stay one step ahead of the interrogator, it heats up about 2.7 degrees. So there's like a 5.5 degree difference between your forehead and your nose. You measure that and you can spot a liar from across the room. So your nose shrinks instead of lengthens. That is science, ladies and gentlemen. Where else but Focal Point are you going to get that kind of critical?
I bet that's the only place on the radio you heard that today.
I'm willing to bet that is
that
true.
just shows that the body is not designed to lie.
No, it's not designed to lie. And, the temperature in the forehead, that's because your brain is working to try to perpetuate the lie. I remember reading a story once about a guy who decided to track it for some reason. He says, I told a lie, and in order to cover up that lie, I counted, and I had to tell 42 additional lies just to cover up the first one. So anyway, nose gives it away every time.
Somebody on Facebook Live just said, and noticed how your nose grew while telling that story, so it must be true.
Must be true. Look at the size of my nose. You're looking at a guy that tells the truth, ladies and gentlemen. I got the proof right here in the middle of my face. Anyway, I want to play a kind of interesting soundbite. And the point of the soundbite, the Bible says that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That means the same Christ that healed in the days of his flesh is alive today and can heal in our own day. And here is proof. This is actually a news story about a man who had a brain tumor. Showed up on their x-rays. They had this guy scheduled for surgery. Massive headaches he had because of this tumor. And here's how the story goes. This is a local news story. Let's listen.
I had massive headaches. I couldn't walk down the hallway without holding onto the walls. You could see the tumor.
Wood's primary physician sent him to a neurosurgeon at UC brain bleed. Although radiologists saw signs of a tumor, Wood immediately turned to his faith and his community for support.
My phone's blowing up. My Facebook is prayer after prayer all over California.
The day before surgery, Wood's operation was canceled. The reason? His suspected tumor was gone.
It's a miracle, and that's the way God planned it.
Specialists say they can't explain why everything vanished. Wood's doctor can't either.
We do tests, we have medical technology, and we try to come out with some conclusion. We're like detectives. And sometimes things happen that we can't explain.
Dr. Richard G. Sometimes things happen that we can't explain, but we, ladies and gentlemen, we who believe in Jesus Christ, we can explain. That's the power of Jesus Christ released through intercessory prayer into the body of a man who needed healing and received it. Now, this is not to say it's going to happen every time we pray. I'm not saying that, but it does happen It does happen in the name of Jesus because he is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Now, most of you, like me, are not fans of Saturday Night Live, but you might have heard the dust-up last week when Pete Davidson, who's one of the guys on Saturday Night Live, he apparently was the boyfriend of Ariana Grande. They just had a well-publicized split. I have no idea who she is. I wouldn't recognize an Ariana Grande song if it walked up and bit me in the leg on the sidewalk. So I'm not familiar with these people. But I remember when Dan Crenshaw, he is a soldier who came home from Afghanistan missing one eye because the guy right in front of him stepped on an IUD and it blew his eye out, as well as other injuries. Anyway, he's come back. He ran for office last week, and he was successful. But because he was running for office, he was in the news. And Saturday Night Live actually mocked him. This Pete Davidson guy, a week ago on Saturday, actually mocked him for his eye patch, which, of course, happened because he was overseas defending Pete Davidson's liberty. So anyway, the Saturday Night Live people were gracious enough to invite Pete Davidson to come on, to invite Dan Crenshaw to come on the program last Saturday night, and he did. So he and Pete Davidson, the guy that insulted him and mocked him, they're sitting side by side on the set there. The song that you're going to hear just breaks in there. Dan Crenshaw pretends it's his ringtone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he says, I'd answer it, but I can't because it's rude to answer the phone in the middle of an interview. So he just lets that Ariana Grande song play. And, of course, everybody in the audience knows that they're poking fun at Pete Davidson because this is the woman who was his girlfriend a week ago. So anyway, that's the backstory on that. But let's listen to this from where this conversation takes up to the end of the segment.
I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It was a poor choice of words. The man is a war hero, and he deserves all the respect in the world. And if any good came of this, maybe it was that for one day, the left and the right finally came together to agree on something. That I'm a
You think?
That's Dan Crenshaw flipping into Pete next to him.
Dan Crenshaw, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for making a Republican look good.
You gotta stop saying that, man. You've been saying it all day. Please. Look, I just wanted to say, for people that don't know, the reason you're wearing an eye patch right now is that you lost your eye to an IED in Afghanistan during your 3rd combat tour. And I'm sorry.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate you saying that.
So we good?
We're good. Apology accepted.
Just keep breathing.
It sounds like my phone's ringing.
You gonna answer that?
No, and I was just gonna let it ring because that's rude to answer. Let's just let it go to voicemail.
No, it's cool. Ariana Grande's cool, man. Yeah.
Oh, do you know her?
All right, so that's funny. All right. So last week I made a joke about a picture of you, and I feel like it would only be fair if you got me back and made fun of a picture of me. Does that sound okay?
I don't really need to do that.
No, come on. I deserve it.
All right, I'll do it.
Please. All right.
And now, first impressions with Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw.
Thanks, Colin. This is Pete Davidson. He looks like if the meth from Breaking Bad was a person.
Not bad. So there, we're even. All right.
Hold on, well, one more. This is.
All right.
He looks like a troll doll with a tapeworm.
Yeah, man. All right, that's good. We should wrap this up.
Oh, hold on. No, this is fun. This is fun.
Cool.
He looks like Martin Short in the Santa Claus 3. By the way, one of these people was actually good on SNL.
No, you're right. No, you're not wrong.
Okay, but seriously, there's a lot of lessons to learn here. Not just that the left and right can still agree on some things, but also this: Americans can forgive one another. We can remember what brings us together as a country and still see the good in each other. This is Veterans Day weekend, which means that it's a good time for every American to connect with a veteran. Maybe say thanks for your service, but I would actually encourage you to say something else. Tell a veteran, never forget. When you say never forget to a veteran, you are implying that as an American, you are in it with them, not separated by some imaginary barrier between civilians and veterans, but connected together as grateful fellow Americans. We'll never forget the sacrifices made by veterans past and present, and never forget those we lost on 9/11, heroes like Pete's father. So I'll just say, Pete, never forget.
Never forget. And that is for both of us.
All right, so that's, to me, the reason I played that, it's a long clip, much longer than we normally play, but I wanted you to see the humor and the interchange, and I want to commend the folks at SNL for having the character to provide for this little exchange to take place, to Pete Davidson for an apology, because this is how you apologize. You notice he didn't try to excuse it. He didn't try to minimize it. He just said, I'm sorry. What I did was wrong. I'm sorry. And then Dan Crenshaw models forgiveness. We're good. And then they have a little fun with it. And then it concludes with a very serious note where Dan Crenshaw says, look, you greet a veteran. The way to greet him is say, we will never forget. We'll never forget what you've done. We'll never forget what you were prepared to do. We will never forget the work that our soldiers, our men and women in arms have done. So anyway, that was I thought, pretty cool deal. Got a new hero, by the way, Isabella Chow. She is a student senator at UC Berkeley. Now, she was elected to the student senate as a Republican. A resolution went before the student council at UC Berkeley to criticize, to condemn Donald Trump for defining the word sex in Title IX. This is where all the discrimination protections are found. One of the categories is you can't be discriminated against on the basis of sex. Now, what the word sex means is your biological sex. You are either male or you are female. That's what the Congress people meant in 1964 when they enacted that piece of legislation. It still means the same thing. And Donald Trump has decided he's going to get that definition into Title IX. So we're no longer fooling around with all these definitions about sexual orientation and transgenderism and all that kind of stuff. So the student council at Berkeley wanted to condemn it. And Isabella Chow would not sign on to the condemnation. Apparently she was the only student senator that didn't endorse this resolution of condemnation for Donald Trump. She just abstained from voting. And here's what she said. There's a Christian community and a campus that has been praying for me and encouraging me throughout all this. If I don't represent their views, who else will? And she says, I would not have been able to vote for that resolution without violating my most deeply held values. Now, she offered an op-ed to the Daily Californian, that's the student newspaper there. They wouldn't publish it. Just explaining her point of view. There wasn't a hateful word in it. But because she had reservations about transgenderism and homosexuality, they accused her, student newspaper, of homophobia and transphobia. We can't publish your op-ed. We can't publish your letter to the editor because according to our standards, it is homophobic and transphobic. Isabella Chow said she has no intention of resigning and says there's an important role for her to represent her constituents. Good for her. May her tribe increase. By the way, 98 Democrats have come out with a resolution saying that defining a person's legal sex, which is what Trump is planning to do, is cruel and unscientific, when it's exactly the opposite. What's cruel and unscientific is to pretend that somehow people can be born in the wrong body, to pretend that somehow people can change their genders, to pretend that somehow surgical mutilation to alter the appearance of one's body is a healthy thing to do. That's what is cruel and unscientific. So Donald Trump squarely within the mainstream of scientific thought. And by the way, speaking of the whole transgender issue and the harm it causes, 9 women have filed a lawsuit in Fresno, California, my old hometown, against a homeless shelter there, probably run by people I know, because the nonprofit allowed a transgender biological man to be claiming to be a woman to sexually harass them. the homeless shelter, I know these people, but my good friends run the Boise Rescue Commission. They wouldn't fall for any of this nonsense. But each of the 9 homeless women were staying at Naomi's house, and the rules, I'll finish the story when we get right back. Rules require women to shower daily.
All believers, no matter how poor and lowly you may think you might be, all believers have angels as their convoys at death into the presence of King Jesus. Isn't that a wonderful truth?
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series, Angels, What the Bible Reveals, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Hey, Target. You thought we were done? Did you think we would give up? Well, of course not. We still stand strong with our belief that men do not belong in the women's restrooms or changing areas. It's absurd. We should not have to walk in your restrooms with the fear of someone of the opposite sex walking in on us. Together, we will stop this open-door policy. Help us by signing the pledge to boycott Target at afa.net.
Our concern about 13 Reasons Why has not diminished. If you've signed the AFA petition to Netflix CEO Reed Hastings, then you've probably heard the story of Anna Bright, who killed herself after binge-watching the show. But did you know she wasn't the first, nor the last? Other young people have been influenced by this program and have taken their own lives. Netflix says they want to stimulate conversations about taboo topics like teen suicide, but they still refuse to have a conversation with the American Family Association about the dangers of their show. Please pray that God will change Mr. Hastings' mind so that he pulls 13 Reasons Why before another life is lost. Look for the AFA Action Alerts with information you can email and share on social media so that others can sign the petition too by visiting afa.net. Every vulnerable teen is another reason why.
What if I told you that you could clean your family's laundry and help reach the next generation at the same time? That opportunity is here through a company called Redeem Clean. Every time you use Redeem Clean products, you help support the ministry of the American Family Association. In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean laundry detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made in the USA. And they were developed exclusively for the support of the American Family Association. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and order Redeem Clean products at redeemclean.afastore.net. That's redeemclean.afastore.net.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to the fastest 60 minutes in American media. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point. Do not forget, right after this program, we go into Focal Point Overtime, live streaming on Facebook. It's available exclusively on the Focal Point Facebook page. Go to Facebook-Brian Fisher on Facebook, and it'll pop right up, and you'll see the icon right in the middle of the screen, and you can track hour number 2, kind of a bonus hour. All the stuff I didn't have time to wedge into the fastest 60 hours in American media will be on Focal Point Overtime.
And that, Brian, is doing very well, by the way. You have quite a community of people that are joining you on that Facebook Live. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's fun. And, you know, the comments they post, that you post, show up on the screen. They scroll past me on the screen, so I can take a quick glance at those, and I can kind of stay abreast with what our listening community is thinking and their questions and their observations.
Yeah, you get it in real time.
Yeah, it's in real time.
Cool.
So it is a fun deal. So Debbie said 60 minutes, not 60 hours. What does that mean?
You might have accidentally said 60 hours and it missed both of us. So
Either that or she's reminding 60 minutes, big boy. 60 minutes, not the rest of the afternoon. Don't get carried away. So anyway, I'll get the answer on that one. Now, Bob Woodward, and it's interesting, the press looking at Donald Trump, the number of people in the press that are now saying that Donald Trump is outwitting them. He's outsmarting them. They have been so blinded, and when you're blinded by rage and hate, you just don't think clearly. You know what I'm saying. You get so angry, you're virtually out of control. You don't think straight. You don't make good decisions. And you yield to all the wrong impulses and all that. And Bob Woodward is saying that's what the media is doing with Donald Trump. They are playing right into his hands. Donald Trump is playing them like a xylophone. Well, not like I play a xylophone, but by the way, a good person would play a xylophone. Let's listen, clip number 3.
I think that we're taking the bait in the press, and Trump is just throwing it out on the table and saying, you're the enemy of the people, and then we get all steamy and emotionally unhinged about
what Woodward's saying, basically playing right into Donald Trump's hands. Got to apologize to Jeff. He got so lost trying to picture what it would look like for me to be trying to play the xylophone that I got him completely distracted.
Yeah.
Now here is Eric Swalwell, clip number 4. And here's the difference. Here's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how to put this any other way. I'm going to put it as baldly as I possibly can. The difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party is that when the Republican Party gets power, they wimp out. They don't know what to do with it. They compromise. They just kind of fumble it all away, trying to be nice, trying to get the media to say nice things about them. That's why we had all the major decision-making branches of the government were in Republican hands for the last 2 years. How much got done? Nothing. They got a tax cut bill through, and that's it in 2 years. And they had control of everything. So you're saying I'm getting a little bit worked up about that because it just frosts me when we see this happen. But the Democrats are not like that. These guys are willing to play hard cheese. That's the difference. The Republicans never play hard cheese. They don't have any principles, none, that they're willing to go to the mat for, that they're willing to, no hills they have that they're willing to die on. Like over this last weekend, the candidate for Senate in Mississippi who defeated Chris McDaniel in the primary, she admitted at a campaign event that she's voted for legislation that funds Planned Parenthood. She admitted it. So she's a Republican, claims, which is the pro-life party, ostensibly. She claims to be a pro-life Republican. She admitted 3 days before the election that she voted for legislation that funds Planned Parenthood. And by the way, over the weekend at another campaign event, she was introduced by a kind of a rancher type, a Western-looking guy. And I don't know where this came from, but she said this: if he, referring to Colin Hutchinson, who is the publisher of the Bayou Brief, no, I guess the Bayou Brief published it, but this Colin Hutchinson, he was campaigning for her. And, this is Mississippi. We probably had more lynchings in Mississippi than any other state in the Union. And here's what Cindy Hyde-Smith, 38% of the population of Mississippi is black. You're going to win in Mississippi? You've got to give African Americans, emphasis on Americans, you got to give them some reason to vote for you. Solid conservative Republicans give them lots of reasons to vote for them. But here's Cindy Hyde-Smith saying about the guy campaigning with her: if he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row. Now, I doubt that Cindy Hyde-Smith has a racist bone in her body, but you talk about how tone deaf this is, and her opponent, this Mike Espy, who card-carrying hardcore Democrat, served in the Clinton administration. I mean, his campaign commercials from here till November 27 will just be a side-by-side Cindy Hyde-Smith talking about being in the front row for a public hanging right next to the picture of the lynching of a black in Mississippi. So I don't know, it's hard for me to see how she survives this. And I just got to tell you, just in the full disclosure, I'm probably not going to be able to vote for Cindy Hyde-Smith because I made a commitment to myself a number of years ago that I would never vote for someone who voted to give money to Planned Parenthood. I just would not do it. If a legislature or potential legislator doesn't have a value system that recognizes the utter abhorrence of taking money out of the wallets of American people and giving it to Planned Parenthood, they do not deserve my vote. They're going to waffle and be wrong on other issues as well. So who knows? I don't know if other people are going to feel the same way, but it's possible that Mississippi, one of the reddest states in the Union, because of these misfires, is going to wind up putting a Democrat in the Senate. I mean, it could happen. So we'll see how all of that works out, and that would get the Republicans down to 50 votes in the Senate. If the Democrats are successful, they've already gotten Arizona. Now they're working to steal an election in Florida. They're working on one in Georgia. So we could wind up knotted up by the time the Democrats get through stealing stuff and the Republicans get through fumbling stuff away. Who knows where we could be. I mean, I'm telling you, I never get agitated at the Democrats. You know why? Because they are who they are. They never surprise me. They're absolutely, utterly predictable. They don't have any convictions. They don't have any moral convictions, and they don't pretend that they do. But Republicans, they make a show. I mean, Cindy Smith, the candidate that talked about being in the front row for a public hanging, the only thing she knows how to say is conservative values and conservative principles. On the campaign trail, she says it over and over and over again. I have no idea if she even knows what those words mean because she never talks long enough to give you an idea. She doesn't participate in debates, won't do interviews. She was invited repeatedly to come on this program. So anyway, I think she just put that race. I mean, she was a solid lock to win that thing until that comment over the weekend. So who knows what's going to happen with that. I guess Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona won. And, again, Kyrsten Sinema, she's the one that said if an American wanted to fight for the Taliban, I don't have a problem with that. Kyrsten Sinema said that Arizona is the meth lab of democracy, insulting her own state. She said the people in Arizona are crazy. So she repeatedly mocked and ridiculed and insulted the people of her own state. She said, I don't care if somebody in America fights for the Taliban. And apparently she's going to win. It was a come-from-behind thing for her, so you're always suspicious. I mean, there have been 27 runoff elections. Well, it's not a runoff, but, every one of these cases where there's some kind of contested election, have you noticed that they always wind up in Democrat hands? Have you noticed that? Yeah. That they almost never wind up in the hands of the Republicans. And that's what we're looking at in Florida. We're looking at voter fraud on an absolutely epic scale. But anyway, here's Eric Swalwell, back to my original point about Democrats play hard cheese, Republicans never do. Here's Eric Swalwell from California. Here's what he says the Democrats are ready to do.
The Republicans have been unable for the last 2 years to fund the government with their own votes. They run government, of course. They have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House, but they can't sort out themselves, so they've had to rely on Democratic votes. They're not going to get Democratic votes if they're not going to be willing to make sure that we protect the Mueller probe.
So he's got legislation to protect the Mueller probe, and if the Republicans don't vote for it, we're not going to give them any money. We are going to shut their government down. We're going to shut their military down. We're going to shut them right down. So Democrats have something they're willing to go to the mat for. Republicans don't. That's the thing that drives me so crazy. They'll go to the mat. Eric Swalwell will go to the mat to protect this Mueller probe, which is a total snipe hunt. There's nothing there. It's a complete hoax. No evidence in 18 months plus of any collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. But still they're out there. If you try to shut that thing down, we are going to cut off your money. We will shut down government before we give you a penny. And you talk to the Republicans about shutting down government, man, they get so nervous. Sweat starts pouring out of the pores on their forehead. It freaks them out to think about shutting government. Here are the Democrats campaigning on it. Eric Swalwell. Let's drop down to clip number 7. This is Jim Clapper. Here, we're going to get into the kind of reigning view that the Democrats have of everything that's going on right now in Washington, D.C. in the wake of this election.
Do you believe the president decided to fire Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, and to not name the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, to become the acting Attorney General because he's trying to obstruct the Russia investigation by putting someone in charge who agrees with him that it's basically a sham?
Well, it may not be so blunt as to obstruct the investigation. What I think, my own theory here is, what I think the reason for installing Mr. Whitaker as the acting Attorney General, the legality of that aside, is to gain access to just what evidence Mueller actually has. Because I think that's one thing that really bothers the president is it would appear to me, ignorance about what the evidence that Mueller may have against him.
All right, so basically saying he wants Whitaker because he knows what's going on in the Mueller campaign and Trump can pick his brain. Carl Bernstein here, clip number 8 of Watergate fame, says basically the same thing. Let's listen.
He now has, unless Whitaker is going to immediately recuse himself, he now has a spy camera into the investigation.
Well, but you also,
Jeffrey,
Carl,
do you think that this is right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
he's the supervisor. This has been what he has lost and not had. It's one of the reasons that he wanted to fire Comey. Comey wouldn't tell him what was going on in the investigation. He now has the ability to know what's going on, including how that office, Mr. Mueller, is looking at his son-in-law, at his son.
All right, so Carl Bernstein says Trump's doing this to get a spy into the Mueller investigation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, do you realize just how absolutely ludicrous this is? Think of how much effort the Democrats went to, beginning in 2016, to find a way to spy on Donald Trump, to spy on his campaign, to spy on his associates. And are they ashamed of that? Are they embarrassed by that? Oh, no. They are going to punish anybody who tries to stop that thing from going forward. So apparently in Democrat world, it's perfectly okay for us to spy on Trump, but it's not okay for him to spy on anybody. So that's Democrat values for you right there. Now, very quickly to Broward County. I got almost no time for this. Let me see if I can find the stuff. Got a lot of stuff going on, of course. We're not going to know for sure what the outcome of this is for a while. But Broward County, back to Mississippi, after Cindy Hyde-Smith said, I bet there are a lot of people out there in Mississippi saying, man, I'd love to get my ballot back so I could vote for Chris McDaniel this time. But unfortunately, you don't live in Florida, so it's not going to happen. Okay, now here is something. This just broke this morning. There was a citizen that was filming in the Broward County Elections Office. She filmed officials bundling and bagging votes. So she's filming them. They're putting all these ballots and votes in these blue canvas bags, and she's videoing it. When they see that she's videotaping it, they wheel a bunch of carts and stuff in front of her, so she can't see them and can't video whatever they are doing. And then here's another one. There is an affidavit from a Florida campaign worker who saw Broward County election staff filling out blank absentee ballots. When she was in this room, she saw a stack of blank ballots on the right of these workers. They would fill things out, scribble on them. They'd put them in a pile to the left, and they were filled out absentee ballots. Florida trying to steal one again. Well, that's it for today. Bow low before God, stand tall before man. Never forget, with God's help, we are fighting a winnable war. See you, Focal Point Overtime.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family